Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you saw what happened on the pitch during this massive 2026 World Cup matchup, you're probably still picking your jaw up off the floor. I know I am. We are looking at a complete paradigm shift in global football here. Look, we've always known Brazil to carry that Joga Bonito flair, right? That undeniable aura of being the tournament favorites. But what happened out there? It wasn't just a tactical defeat. It was a flat-out beating in attitude and confidence. Morocco didn't just show up to play. They absolutely humbled the Brazilian giants right from the opening whistle. Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote perfectly captures the sheer shock of that opening phase. I mean, imagine saying that about Brazil. But honestly, it was the absolute truth. Morocco completely suffocated them. They dictated the tempo, they controlled the possession, and they basically laid out Brazil's tactical flaws on a silver platter for the entire world to see. For a solid stretch of that game, you would have genuinely thought Brazil was a lower-tier side, hopelessly outmatched by a true footballing superpower. I want you to completely discard your old notions of football hierarchies right now. The days of automatically assuming the traditional South American and European powerhouses are just going to steamroll the rest of the world, those days are officially over. Section 1. Morocco's dominance over Brazil, an early shock in the 2026 World Cup. And this brilliantly illustrates that we aren't talking about some cute fairy tale underdog story. This wasn't David versus Goliath. Just look at the rankings. We have Brazil sitting at number 6, with Morocco right on their heels at number 7. This was actually the only group draw featuring 2 top 10 teams going head-to-head. So this was a legitimate heavyweight clash between 2 absolute titans of the modern game. And Morocco, well, they played exactly like the heavyweights they've become. Now, let's talk about the number 25. As you probably know, the format has shifted a bit. We're not really looking at traditional halves anymore, but rather 25-minute quarters, thanks to the new World Cup hydration break rules. And in that very first 25-minute quarter, it was an absolute masterclass for Morocco. Brazil literally couldn't cope. It was so thoroughly one-sided that Brazil couldn't even scratch that. They couldn't even manage 4 consecutive passes without a Moroccan player swarming in and recovering the ball. They were constantly doubling, even tripling up on the Brazilians, completely choking the life out of the game. Section 2. Brazil's midfield struggle, the diesel engine problem. So what exactly went wrong for the 5-time world champs? Let's get into the tactical breakdown, specifically focusing right in the center of the park, because the game was entirely lost in Brazil's midfield, which struggled spectacularly to gain any sort of foothold. Our source analysis gave us this absolutely hilarious but brutally accurate metaphor. Looking at the Brazilian midfield trio of Casemiro, Bruno Guimaraes, and Lucas Paquetá, it honestly looked like 15-year-old diesel engines band in Delhi. They just looked a yard or two too slow. Everything was happening at this blistering pace, and this trio was stuck playing at 1x speed, while Morocco was buzzing around at 8x. They were losing the ball, completely failing to intercept, and just looked totally rattled by the intensity. Now contrast that sluggishness with Morocco's highly technical, incredibly press-resistant young core. You had Boadi, who easily walked away as the man of the match. Just an absolute gem in the midfield who was virtually impossible to press. You had Saibari applying the finishing touches, and Brahim Diaz pulling the strings, weaving passes together like a master knitter making a sweater. Their passes were perfectly weighted, technically flawless, and they completely sliced right through the Brazilian shape. And I have to bring up this fantastic moment of humor from the analysis. The commentator, maybe having a slight slip at the tongue, or maybe just having some fun with it, jokingly referred to Sabari as Sabrina Carpenter right as he scored. Off this perfectly threaded needle of a pass from Diaz in transition, Sabrina Carpenter nonchalantly chips the ball right over Alisson, directly between 2 Brazilian center backs who have literally played in Champions League finals. I mean, come on, that is an outrageous display of confidence. Section 3. Vinicius Junior, Brazil's savior. The individual brilliance that saved the system. But just as it looked like Brazil was going to be entirely humiliated, we have to pivot the narrative. Because when the collective system completely breaks down, you desperately need a superstar to step up. I want to pose this question directly to you. Who saves Brazil when they have zero identity out on the pitch? Rafinha was running his heart out, right? Doing all the dirty work, pressing tirelessly, but it just wasn't translating into results. Igor Thiago missed a crucial header that barely glanced off his head and went wide. The whole team was completely disjointed. They needed a hero. Fast. Now, what's really interesting about this number is the context surrounding that hero. Vinicius Junior has had this massive weight on his shoulders. In roughly 50 caps for his country, he had historically really struggled to replicate his Real Madrid form on the international stage. He hadn't even cracked 15 goals. On top of that, missing out on the 2024 Ballon d'Or was largely blamed on his incredibly underwhelming performance in the Copa America, where Brazil got knocked out in the quarterfinals. People were actively asking, when is Vini actually going to step up for Brazil? Well, the answer was today. Completely against the run of play, just out of absolutely nowhere, Vinicius Junior delivered a world-class strike. Up until that exact second, his game was, frankly, pretty average. But that single moment of pure individual brilliance, it changed everything. It pulled a completely outmatched Brazilian side right back into a 50-50 contest. It's the kind of goal that doesn't just save a single match, it has the very real potential to change the entire trajectory of a player's international career.
Section 4. Morocco, no longer dark horses. A genuine footballing heavyweight. Let's move on and see how this builds into the bigger picture.
So while Vini Jr. saved Brazil's blushes, the second half proved something incredibly important about Morocco. It proved their staying power. The game leveled out into a tight 50-50 battle, sure, but the overarching takeaway was undeniable. We saw a massive clash of philosophies out there. Carlo Ancelotti has openly admitted his strategy for this Brazilian team is reactive. It's quite literally based on suffering. They absorb pressure, rely on their vast experience to weather the storm, and just wait to strike with their lethal forwards. Contrast that with Morocco's proactive, fearless, high-intensity system. They dictate the play. They force the issue.
And listen, this isn't a fluke. Morocco's success is deeply, deeply rooted in massive grassroots development. Just look at the facts. They recently defeated Argentina to win the U20 World Cup. This current squad is a true golden generation. They boast deep bench strength and a bulletproof tactical system that is custom-built for knockout tournament football. They are absolutely not to be taken lightly anymore. They are the real deal.
Section 5. Qatar's historic World Cup point, proving the gap is closing. Before we wrap up today, let's zoom out to the broader global football landscape for a second, because there was another match that perfectly highlights how the gap between the traditional elite and the rest of the world is rapidly closing. Look at exactly what happened between Switzerland and Qatar. For 90 straight minutes, Switzerland entirely dominated the game. Qatar did absolutely nothing. But Switzerland completely failed to kill the match off. They missed chance after chance, including several huge ones from Brill and below. So the crucial point is, because they didn't put the game to bed, Qatar found a single fleeting moment in stoppage time to snatch an equalizer, earning their first ever point in World Cup history against the strongest team in their group. It's a massive lesson in modern football. If you don't kill the game, you will be punished.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we are left with after analyzing these matches. Can Carlo Ancelotti's reactive, suffering style actually carry Brazil all the way to a World Cup trophy? Or are we officially witnessing the takeover of highly systematic, proactive, intense teams like Morocco? The whole global hierarchy is shaking right now, and it's going to be a totally fascinating tournament to watch unfold. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time.